All right. Good evening. Good to see everybody at the late hour this week. Welcome to episode 176 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'll be your host again tonight, Drew at dr_pra, joined by Bill at Supa Dupaflex tonight. Bill, how you feeling?
Yeah, man. Late night, huh? Glad we could make it on. It's a big week for a lot of people. First week of the playoffs for most
Yeah,
leagues, and um, yeah, some leagues if you're lucky enough to get a bye, then you get to sit back and relax. Hope some of your injured players get better, and not sweat it. But um, for the us peasants, that a lot of them that didn't get the bye. uh, you know, we got some stuff to worry
yeah.
about this week.
How many buys did you get out of your 14 teams or whatever that are making the playoffs?
Yeah, so I ended up with 13 out of the 17 make the playoffs. One I missed out on by like a handful of points.
Yeah.
So 5 of my 13 have buys, or 1 or 2 seeds, yeah. And
Nice.
so the other 8 have some matchups this week, and yeah, uh, that's nice. I mean, I don't have to. I know I have at least 5 teams in the semifinals, so that's a
Yeah.
positive thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I've only got maybe 2 or 3 buys total out of my 9 or 10 teams that made it here. So
Okay.
definitely feels good to be able to just kind of let whatever's going to happen there, and then hone in and see. I kind of I slept on waivers this week. So was there anybody that you were really gunning for this week to try to add depth or to try play and kind of keep away in any of your matchups?
No, I didn't. I'm kind of the same. Like I didn't really have a lot of time to dig in, especially again in my matchups and things like that. I just didn't have time to really do a deep dive to see like what my opponents needed and things like that. So, I mean, I saw a lot of people paying up for Easton Stick,
Hmm.
and then I got them in one league where nobody even put a claim in, like after the
Nice.
waivers. So yeah, like I mean, there wasn't really anybody I felt like I needed to really go after. I mean, I'm usually pretty good with my depth at quarterback. I mean, maybe Demarcus Robinson's one that if I just want to add somebody that maybe could have a big game if I needed him to, with Stafford being his quarterback, but I don't see me ever playing him either. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like, it's really this week has been more for me about trying to maybe add like 4 of my leagues have trade deadlines out of the
Mm.
17.
Okay.
Or FFPC already had theirs, so there's like one that I couldn't do anything about, but then 4 more were deadline tonight. So um, yeah, I just tried to make a few additions for a little bit of depth in a position if I felt like I was lacking. Like one league, I only had Etienne and Henry, and then like P Ryan was my third running back, and I tried to make a
Nice.
trade for like Kamara from a team who wasn't in the playoffs, but they never responded to my offer. So what are you gonna do? And I added McKinnon for like Schoonmaker,
Okay.
just in case he ends up, doing a Jerick McKinnon thing again, where he ends up
Yeah.
being the guy at the end of the season. So
Nice.
yeah,
This is always an interesting week for me. I kind of get in my head here a little bit, kind of like week one of the regular season. Do you go back to a like just start your studs no matter how they've been performing recently, or are you digging into the matchups a little bit more at this point and trying to think through the last 2, 3, 4 weeks for a little bit of sample size for what to expect?
I mean, like this is that's not my thing. Being able to um, like overly correct based on like I'm pretty much like looking at it, and then I look at like projections and things like that and kind of see like how close I am and if there's anything way out of whack compared to what my thoughts were. It's like I'll take into matchups into account a little bit, and but yeah, I'm usually pretty much starting my best players unless there's some crazy like situation change or something like that that I have to overweight somebody's situation. But Yeah, I'm usually a
Yeah.
start your studs kind of guy, I think.
Yeah, I think that's how I typically lean as well. I'm similar. I think I'll look at the projections, I'll look at the matchups and see, and if I'm a lower seed and it looks like I'm projected to lose by a lot, then I might throw a Hail Mary in there and see if there's a guy that I feel like especially if you picked him off waivers last week, you picked him up for a reason probably. If he wasn't depth, then go ahead and see if he can go in there, and then you're looking at guys. Like the Chargers, where you're probably still starting Eckler no matter what, even without Herbert there. But anybody else, like, does that affect, Keenan Allen for you at all, or some
Well,
of
I
these other
think he's
guys that?
out this week.
Oh, is he out already?
I
Anyways,
believe
okay.
so. I think I saw that today, or it's at least reported that he's likely out. Yeah, I mean that it's got to be something that you know take into account. It's kind of like Devontae, with O'Connell, and you're probably still starting him because like there's who else do you start over a stud,
Hmm.
and you just got to hope that we see it all the time where a wide receiver overcomes a bad quarterback. So um, I think usually I'm going to lean towards those guys because if you start like if you have like Keenan, let's say he was playing this week,
Hmm.
or you're like it's him or like Gabe Davis or somebody like that, like, and Gabe Davis gets your 0 for 2 targets, and uh like Keenan Allen's gonna get his regardless, even if it's only gonna get you 10 PPR points or something. Like
Hmm.
you're gonna at least have that floor typically for somebody like that because they're gonna get so many targets, even if they're not good targets. So
Well, here's a good one for matchups, and involves both of our teams in a way.
yeah.
So Jerry Bagshaw is putting up here. I'm in a close matchup, but thinking about starting Russ versus Detroit over Dak versus Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I think I'm starting Dak against Buffalo. I understand some Buffalo, and I understand the matchups a little better for Russ. But Russ, their goal is to keep him conservative, in my opinion. Like, I don't think they want him to cook. So, um, although the Detroit's defense is suspect in particular areas, like their second cornerback, and that's who everybody's torching right now. Um, like I just don't think that I don't think that like the difference between the going up against Detroit's defense overcomes how good Dak is this year.
Hmm.
And Buffalo's defense isn't necessarily that great. So I think I got to stick with the potential MVP.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. As much as I would like to think that Buffalo is going to hold the Cowboys to 20 points or less, that's not very likely. So unless you just have some sort of ridiculous weather condition that there's
Yeah,
a
that would be the one thing that would
crazy
change if there's a
blizzard.
ton of rain or a
Yeah,
ton of wind. Because usually that's the big thing, right? Like if there's going to be
yeah,
wind over 15 miles an hour, that's when you have to start worrying about the quarterback play a little bit. And it's not like Dak necessarily has a huge arm, so um, yeah, that would be when I would just pay attention to that, I guess. Then
yeah.
that would be if that were the case, then I would start to kind of think maybe about Russ.
Let me open up. I don't know if you know offhand. I know we don't do a whole lot of other gambling or betting typically, but I'll also follow the points in the game too, right? So I've got to think that
Total
the
points, yeah.
line for total points for the Cowboys Bills game is a decent bit higher than what I expect for Broncos Lions. So I'm trying to see if I can find logging the ESPN here real quick and just see if they throw that out there. So
Yeah, they
Broncos.
do.
Broncos, Lions. Let's see, Detroit's favored by 4, and almost 47.5 is the line there, which
Okay.
is higher than I would have expected. And the Cowboys, Bills is 50.5. So 3-point difference in the line there.
And what's Dallas favored by?
I'm hurt that you assume that Dallas is favored on the road, Bill. Um, but it's since you asked, they are favored by. Oh no, it's actually it's crazy. So ESPN, the app here, it says Buffalo is favored by 2.5. However, then you open up the app and look at their little circle graph of the matchup predictor, and it has the Cowboys at 50.3% odds to win.
Oh yeah, that's because the spread is 2.5 for Buffalo. So okay. So yeah, so the Dallas expected points is higher. They're expected to score 24.
Gotcha. 27, like 27
like
22
or 21.5 for Denver. So yeah, I think I go Dak.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's also, I mean, Courtland Sutton has been better than I think what I expected this year, but there's not a whole lot more there. You got CeeDee Lamb, you've got Ferguson is doing well in matchups, and you've got Brandon Cooks that's very serviceable. Certainly Pollard can catch and run a little bit still. So yeah, I feel pretty strongly about Dak over Russ this week.
Yep.
Let's see here. I think we had a couple of other. Oh, here we go. George play 01. What do we got here? Should I drop Charbonnet or Dowdle for Chase Brown on PPR?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the fact that Chase Brown's getting more touches the last couple games. I mean, it's kind of ramped up a little bit, where I think he was at like 30% snap share. Maybe it was this week. I don't know. I mean, he's exciting. He's like kind of one of those guys that's like maybe like Keaton Mitchell or a speedster guy that can maybe bust one. So, I mean, I don't hate it. Like Dowdle is what he is. He's not going to be an explosive guy. So I would, if between Charbonnet and Dowdle, I would do that. I'm fine cutting Dowdle for Chase Brown.
Yeah, I like that. I think I would agree. I think I would want to hang on to Charbonnet if I could. Yeah, I would be fine with that. Non-PPR doesn't really make a difference for me between those guys. So if you like the big play, I think that's what a lot of people are looking at, that highlight from last week. So,
and I wouldn't mind that, because if you're in the playoffs and you, like you said, there's that time where you're going up against somebody where you're a big underdog. Chase Brown might be a guy that you throw in there because he can bust one and get you a bunch of points in one play. I don't necessarily think you're going to see that out of Dowdle too often.
No, that would be volume, right? And then also for the flex and non-PPR, Waddle, Warren, Keaton, who you just mentioned, or Ty Chandler.
So one of these.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure I'd go Waddle.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not PPR, but like Ty Chandler, I mean, I don't know how much they're going to run it. I mean, they might throw the ball 80% of the game. Keaton's interesting, but yeah, I mean, Waddle by a decent amount for me.
Yeah, I think you listed them in the order that I would suggest them. So
yeah, unless you're I mean, I don't think there's any unless. I think it's just Waddle.
Yeah,
even without the PPR.
Yeah. Cool. Good questions, like those. Okay. Another one for Jerry here. Jerome Ford versus the Bears or Sutton versus Detroit?
So Ford, did they come out with to talk about what his injury was? Because I know there was something with his arm. And so, I mean, he might not have to decide if he's not going to play.
True.
But I mean, Sutton could torch the Lions. But I wonder if they'll put Cam Sutton on him. So if they do that, I mean, it's not a great matchup for Courtland. But if they can get him on Jerry Jacobs, Ford was limited today. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, but if he is healthy, I mean, it seems like Ford's getting his. It seems like every week he's getting like enough to be usable. But Sutton's getting those touchdowns, and
He is.
it seems like he's definitely a guy that Russ feels comfortable throwing to. Like, you can't say that about Jerry Jeudy. So I'm proud. I probably go Jerome Ford if he's healthy, but it's close. And I mean, honestly, I'm not the guy. I'm so bad with lineup decisions.
Well, this is funny because you're typically you build your teams with wide receivers because you want those options there. And just looking at points per game right now, Sutton is averaging about 3 points more per game than Ford is. So I would take the Sutton side.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, that's with me not looking and knowing like what their averages are. I mean, with that being the case,
Ford has the biggest game.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, Ford's got the biggest game between the two. He topped out at about 23 points for his best game this season. But Jeudy is, he's got, I think, 2 games this whole season under double digits, and the rest of them, he's gotten close to 20 a couple times. The last couple of weeks has been 15, 16 points. So I'd feel pretty comfortable.
And he's making great catches. Like, I mean, it's not like he's just getting lucky. Like, I mean, he's playing well, and so yeah, that's fine. I think you're correct in going with Sutton. So what else? Are you doing anything with your playoff teams, like for Dynasty? Like, are you looking to make trades before, or are you kind of like going, well, let's see what happens, and maybe I'll get aggressive if they make it to the semifinals, or like, is it just a case by case?
A couple of the teams that are, I'm on the bottom half of the bracket. I've had a lot of offers actually from some non-playoff teams trying to add players to my roster this week, and I just haven't seen anything compelling enough where I feel like it's going to be enough to change the outcome or change my odds for the outcome.
Yeah,
to be in my favor enough. I think 2 weeks ago I asked you and Josh as we were approaching playoffs about an option to get Kyren Williams, but I would have to give up a good bit to get there. And fortunately for a couple of those weeks, he wouldn't have made the difference for me, so I didn't feel too bad about leaving him there. But
I mean, I think that's really very much like the battle that you have, because sometimes you just feel like, well, I'm going to add this guy because he could help me, and I think a lot of times it doesn't matter. Like, even if you add the player, like, how many times does that particular player win you a week you wouldn't have won, or,
right,
whether you did it or didn't. And so like I can understand like going out and trading for like Tyreek Hill or somebody like that, who's like a huge point addition versus who you have starting now. I actually did add Kyren in a 16-team league yesterday.
Nice. What'd you pay?
I paid my first.
Okay.
I'm the 2 seed. And in that league, there's 8 teams make the playoffs, so there's no buys.
Nice.
So even if I lose this round, I'm the 12th, likely the 12th pick.
Yeah.
So giving up the 1. Well, I guess if the 1 seed lost also, I would be the 111. So that'd be the lowest that I am. So giving up the 111 for Kyren and a 16-teamer. Kyren, I think, will be in a similar situation next year. So I'm okay making that. And it could, if I win this week, then 114 is the latest, And so then I'm paying an early second for him. And
that feels great.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a pretty good price for him. And like I'm starting Dak and Mostert, or not Dak, Ezekiel Elliott and Mostert in that league. So it kind of just shows you like where my running back room is.
Yeah, hopefully you started Zeke last week, right? You had to probably. So
I traded for him before last week. I gave up a third and Teddy Bridgewater for him.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part, right? You get enough of those where, okay, you make the little move, you start the guy, and then all of a sudden, 25 points later, you think you know how to do this every week on every team that you've got.
Yeah, yeah. You think you're just, oh, I'll just make these little moves and they're just going to pay off huge for me. That's just so. I mean, it
It's
just
awesome.
happened that he's in a perfect situation where there's really nobody else. Ty Montgomery played, he fucked up. They cut him.
Yeah.
Like there's like zero depth on that team. So he's going to get it all, even if it's not going to be super efficient. So he's a good guy. If you play like I do, where you don't really have a running back room, like he's a perfect addition just to get you through a few weeks,
Yeah.
Even if he only gets you 10 or 12 this week, like it's still better than probably what I'd get otherwise.
Yeah, you know what? I may need to go and do a little shopping for Zeke here. That might be one of those. I mean, because what do you think you have to give up at this point? A second at the most?
I think that would be probably that you're overpaying with a second.
Okay.
I think you could maybe do a 3 and Zeke for a 2.
Okay.
I think that the person would be happy doing that. I mean, I think a 3rd plus for Zeke is 3rd and 4th, maybe.
Yeah.
I think you can get that from a non-playoff team because what are they going to do with Zeke?
Yeah.
Let's
try a single 3rd and see what happens here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of probably. I'm going to check to see like what some
recent ones
trades have been. Yeah. Zeke for a 3rd, Zeke for 2/3, Zeke for Jaylen Warren, Zeke for a 4th,
wow.
Zeke for a 3, 4, and 4.
And these are all like within the last few days?
These are all today.
Wow.
Zeke for a 3rd. Zeke for a 3rd, 2/3, a 25 3rd. Zeke for Brevin Jordan and a 4.
Jeez.
It just seems like Zeke and a 3rd is about the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can get on board with that.
So him, like Jerick McKinnon, for cheap running backs that could pay off, but Zeke's already in the position. I prefer Zeke over McKinnon. Yeah, he might be somebody I need to also look into adding on a few other teams just to, even if it's just to have depth, peace of mind kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not having to go to the waiver wire and just plug somebody who's on a roster.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like who else is a cheap ad that could get you that much bang for your buck, and I just don't know who it would be.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like for the last few years you were always looking at like a Brandon Cooks at the end of the season. I think of who else.
I mean, you can still get Mostert for probably 2, like a 2nd. And he would be a good buy also right now, especially because Achane apparently dinged his toe now. So, I mean, is that a turf toe? If it's a turf toe, that's trouble. So I don't know. Like, I mean, Mostert's just still plugging along, getting you 2 touchdowns a week. And so paying a 2nd for him could be good money. You know what I mean? Good money spent.
Yeah.
I'm looking up to see like what Zach Moss has been going for. 3rd round. That's kind of Nick Chubb, Roshan Johnson. I mean, he's still getting all the touches. I mean, he just didn't score, but if he scores, he's in pretty good shape. So he's somebody else, like, because you're not going to be able to buy every one of these players that I'm talking about, but maybe one of these is available, and so if you could get Moss for a 3rd, I would still pay that. I think Mostert's definitely the guy I would want, and I'd be willing to pay up to get Mostert over Moss. But I think based on price, I would go Zeke, Mostert, Moss in that order. Is that what you would do, you think? or do you still prefer
Yeah, I mean,
Mostert?
if I think I could get Mostert, especially for like my second, if I'm contending, and I think it's going to be, the 20th pick or later.
Yeah,
I mean, he
yeah,
certainly has the most upside, I think,
yeah.
from any of
Consistent
those
upside. I
guys.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah. So that would be I think that would be the best blend of being, a little bit more aggressive, but also raising your opportunity to pay off big.
yeah. He's
And
on.
then Zeke, yeah.
I have him on 6 of my 17 teams.
Yeah. And probably on almost every playoff team, right?
Yeah. I don't think I have him on any of my non-playoff
And then,
because I
yeah.
traded
So,
him away if I did. Because
okay.
yeah. Trying to think if there's any wide receivers that are like good buys right now. You might be able to roll the dice on Noah Brown.
Yeah.
But
He's dinged up himself.
and now Stroud might not play. And that's crazy. And like all these quarterbacks, it's like, I have Herbert on 3 teams, and it's like,
yeah.
I asked in one league like what it would take to get Stroud, and just to see, like, I know Stroud might not play this week, but like I kind of like Stroud anyway, and so I was like, and he told me he would give me Amari, and he would want T. Higgins. That would be the difference between Stroud and
Herbert.
So yeah, I don't know. I can't do that. I feel like that's a hefty.
It is.
Hefty.
It is.
Ask. So.
It is. Yeah. So I mean, what do you think? What's Mike Evans going for at this point, at his age, this late in the season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to imagine he's like maybe 2 seconds, maybe. Or
yeah, it's got to be a second plus. So whether it's 2 seconds.
Mike Evans for Kendre Miller in a second. Mike Evans and Zeke for Kenneth Walker.
Oof.
Mike Evans and James Conner for a first. Mike Evans for Christian Kirk and Tommy DeVito.
Interesting.
Mike Evans and Jake Browning for 2 seconds.
Okay. I'd be fine with that.
Evans for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of in that range.
He's a little pricier than I was thinking then, maybe. I was thinking he'd be like a second plus I guess maybe one of the guys we talked about last week, like second. Would you do second and Josh Downs for him? Or would you rather just keep Josh Downs and see if he gets a couple big plays in the playoffs for you?
Yeah, I mean, last week kind of throws a wrench into it because Mike Evans really didn't do much, and Godwin got it, So it's like
right after we talked about it,
that recency bias in your brain, it's like hard to pull the trigger on Mike Evans. After
what about a guy like Tyler Lockett at this point?
Yeah, he could be interesting, and I can't imagine he would be too pricey either. Like I feel like this is the last hurrah for him, particularly in Seattle. But maybe he goes to somewhere. Maybe I could see him going to like Detroit. You know what I mean? To fill like one of their wide receiver slots. So he might still have some value. Lockett in a third for a second, I see.
Okay.
Lockett in a third for Madison in a second. Lockett for a second. Lockett in a third for a second. So Lockett for a third. So
I would probably give a third for him pretty easily.
Yeah, I think so too.
What are people giving up for? You mentioned him a moment ago, Amari Cooper.
I have to Cooper for Zeke.
Interesting.
Cooper for Kupp in a third. Like, what a difference! You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's wild.
Like, those are both today. Najee and Amari for Zay Flowers. Amari for a second. Amari for a second. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
he
mean,
could be interesting.
if you're telling me your second could get you either Amari or Mostert, you got to go Mostert, right?
I think so. Like in a
Yeah,
couple for a couple games, yeah. Like
yeah,
I'd rather just know I'm blowing that second and never to be
yeah,
seen the value again. Because either way,
yeah,
that's probably the case. I mean, you could probably sell Amari next year for a second. I mean, he'll still probably be decent, even if you
yeah,
get a third. You know what I mean? Or you do a third and Amari for a second.
yeah,
So Amari's probably more insulated. I mean, because you got to understand if you're getting Mostert, you're basically, it's like
yeah.
driving the car off the lot.
You're on
Like
borrowed time.
immediate depreciation. You're not getting your money
Yeah,
back. So,
yeah,
but he's going to be, I think, the guy that, like, he's just been fucking amazing to just ride that dude all year long for somebody who does like kind of a zero RB ish. He's just been awesome. Like, it's so fun to like look at my running back room and it's like Mostert, Moss, and Ford, and it's just like I'm happy, like.
yeah,
But people are probably saying that same thing where I like to have elite quarterbacks and fucking Jake Browning and
yeah,
whoever else is outperforming my Justin Herbert and whomever. So it's been a
yeah. Well,
really just weird year. You know what I mean? It's like you just have to like kind of avoid all these bombs that we've been dealt throughout the whole season. And hopefully you have the depth or you've made the moves when you had to, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's the skill part, right? Is can kind of how do you respond and you know how do you build your team so you are able to make moves that don't cripple you in another area to compensate for what you just lost. So
and
uh,
and kind of be realistic of like what your team is, because it's like, okay, I have, I don't know, let's say Mark Andrews and he gets hurt, and you look at your team and you're like, yeah, I don't know if my team's that great. Maybe you hold on to Mark Andrews, you don't sell him for
yeah,
for a discount to somebody. You just say, okay, I'm just going to ride this out and see if I can piecemeal at something with like Hunter Henry or something like that that's way
yeah,
cheaper, as opposed to trading him for like TJ Hawkinson or somebody, and
yeah,
or just whomever, Kittle, somebody like that. And it's just kind of making the right decisions, because you could hurt your team even more by, being overly reactive to a situation. So, but if your team's good enough, you don't want to sit back and lose weeks because you didn't do anything. So, it's that's why you like to build depth on your team. So if you do have to make those moves, you can, like I transit in one team, I flipped Andrews and Marquise Brown for Laporta. Like,
yeah,
I just got 6 years younger, and Marquise Brown, somebody who I really like to have on my teams, but to get 6 years younger and have an elite tight end, I'm okay doing that. And
yeah,
it didn't hurt my wide receiver room because I have 8 wide receivers I'm willing to start. So, yeah, in Dynasty it's a little easier. It's redraft is really just
yeah. Make some choices.
Yeah, you're just waivers, right, and hope for the best.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I tried to in my home keeper league. I lost Richardson and Andrews this year, which all things considered, compared to a couple of the other guys, that was that was mild. But I got to the peak like week 6, 7. I was number 1 seed, high point scorer. But then the last few weeks has been a slide. So I tried to make a desperate move last week and send Richardson and Andrews to give another team 2 decent keeper options next year. And I was going after Debo, and I forgot just another quarterback that was starting, because my quarterbacks have been Aiden O'Connell and Kyler Murray. It's kind of been my combo. And that just didn't go anywhere either. It's like, how much value do I have to throw at you? But redraft is just such a different beast to try to round out the team, and
Yeah.
everybody thinks they still have a chance up to a certain point. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, hopefully you've had some fun this year, and hopefully you have some learns. I don't know. I'm not a huge like reflect on each year and see. There have definitely been some years where I've had a takeaway or two where it's like, yep, never doing that again, or I watch somebody else in another league make something happen, and like, yeah, I need to adapt. I need to adopt that for my next season coming up. So, yeah, this year just felt like you said before, just trying to stay alive and hang on and keep a starting roster some weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess anything from this year for you and your teams, you certainly had a lot of success, based on your records. So, I think that probably solidified for you your typical build. Feels like it's a pretty good philosophy at this point. But any takeaways from this year that you're thinking about next year to try again, or something you want to tweak differently for any of your teams?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is, I like to go back and look at all my trades in each league just to kind of see like how they turned out and see like maybe the ones that didn't work too well for me. Like, when did I do those during the season? Like there was some, like pretty much every one of my running back trades early like failed. Like when I traded for them pre NFL draft, and I don't know why I'm making trades for running backs pre NFL draft. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like we don't even know if their players are going to make teams. So for running backs, so it's like, or who's going to get drafted to screw somebody's value and things like that. Like I traded away a CeeDee Lamb this offseason, and the big piece coming back to me was Kenneth Walker. And then they draft Charbonnet. And, so that kind of like I got other pieces, but like not only it's like a double whammy almost, you know what I mean? Because I'm giving up an elite wide receiver who got better. And then I got a running back who now had competition. And so things like that, just kind of like looking back and kind of seeing my trends, and like I basically I'm telling myself, well, just don't make trades for where the big piece is running back. I don't really feel like I need to make a trade for a running back until the season's begun. I don't need to start week 1 with a beautiful lineup. Let's see if we can make do with what we have, and then we can see the roles that running backs have, and maybe we can react with a little bit more information. So I think that's kind of where I am. And then be aggressive. Like Kyren Williams gets a ton of touches. All right. Puka Nacua gets a ton of touches. All right. Let's be aggressive on those guys, because it's not, after they've done it for 2 weeks, like it's not out of, like it's now a trend in a way, like we're seeing that these guys are getting volume, and people aren't going to react quick enough value wise. So you can still get the players at a discount relative to what their value is going to be in a month. And so be aggressive early on. It might work sometimes. Last year I traded for Romeo Doubs. He started out pretty hot. Maybe I slightly overpaid for him, but it was worth the risk. And then this year I did it with Puka, and it paid off. So, just being a little bit more aggressive with the players early in the season. And, you can't follow like all the hype pieces, like Achane, was a big hype piece. And then Keaton Mitchell was, and it's like, okay, well, I can't keep buying every single hype player, but those are both guys I'd be happy to have on my rosters now. And but other than that, I mean, I don't really think I'm changing too much. I kind of like how I build my teams. Really a lot of depth at wide receiver, an elite tight end, or at least a top 6 tight end. Pretty good quarterbacks. I don't like going in with like Geno, Stafford, and Gardner Minshew or something. I want to have one or two of the top guys. And then running backs, I'll just figure out once the season starts. How about yourself? Do you have anything that's kind of caught your mind?
Yeah, I think definitely a couple of teams I try to get a little bit more aggressive earlier in the season. And it's worked out with mixed reviews. And a couple of those leagues I threw picks around pretty loosely at the beginning of the year because I've typically been pretty tight with my picks. I certainly, especially my earlier ones, I want to hang on to those, right? I feel like maybe I've overvalued those in the past, so I tried something new this year. Let me see what happens if I get rid of them. Can I either get them back when I want them, or will it pan out in a way where I won't regret it later on? And the jury's out a little bit. I think in my gut, I would like to have gone back and probably held on a couple of those picks now. And then, like you said, just be a little bit more patient into the season, especially on the running back side, and then figure that out as you need to. Something I was glad I did is I was a little bit more conservative. I had Puka on a couple teams, and I held out, had some early offers week 1, week 2, a first and, another player like a veteran or something. I was able to hold out and get a little bit more once the trend solidified itself a few weeks later. I think for this year, it definitely, I need to lean more toward the wide receiver and certainly tight end. I've always been kind of I'll figure tight end out because I don't want to pay up for the elite guy. So I'll get 3 or 4 of the next batch and hope I can play some matchups. But I've definitely had a couple of leagues where I've benefited from having the elite guys. And it just feels nice to plug and play and then go from there.
Well, I kind of feel like, and I was watching, I think it was Dynasty Theory, and I think it was Mitch that mentioned where he feels like tight ends values are actually going to drop. And I kind of agree with it, because we're so used to having like 3 guys that have completely separated themselves from everybody else. And that's why people would draft them so early. And now, because it feels like there's more depth, some younger guys, but they're all getting crunched together in their points per game, that it's like, do you really need to pay up for an elite tight end anymore? I think that Kelsey only averages like 1 or 2 points more than Hockenson. And then Hawkinson's like a point above Laporta, and it's Kittle and all those guys. And so you might have 7 or 8 guys that are all within like 5 points where, there was years where Kelsey was well over 5 points over the next guy,
Yeah.
And so I think that this year people might not correct enough at tight end, and they'll still be paying up for tight ends, and they'll be pulling the other tight ends up towards like earlier. And I don't necessarily know that's the right move. I think that like this offseason might be the offseason that I'm more willing, if in a startup, to sit back and maybe pick the last of a tier that's a little bit lower and just like play roulette and hope, you know what I mean? Like, and let's see what happens and add other positions.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. So, it's fun to get those good young guys, but like, do you really feel that different getting like Njoku versus, like Kincaid, like, or Ingram, or like,
yeah,
you're still getting the points. It's not as sexy. It's not as fun because you're not getting that young stud, but you might be getting very similar points. And like, I kind of want to, now I want to go into like Superflex.
Go look and see
like kind of what the points are.
Yeah. Well, Njoku's been on a roll the last 5 weeks or so. Ingram, I think, has spiked, kind of had some of the peaks and valleys this season. But I think, per game.
So this is 1.5 PPR for the tight ends, but Kelsey's 19.8, Hawkinson's 18.4, Ingram and Laporta are like 16, Andrews 15.7, Kittle 15.1. So like you have 6 guys all within a few points of each other for the top. And then you have Komet is 7. He's at 13.5. And then you go all the way to Logan Thomas at 16 is at 10.5. So like, it's not, you're still getting a lot of guys averaging 10 points or more. And if you can get an elite player at a different position that can separate themselves, compared to their peers, it might be better to add um, like one of those players over an elite tight end. But
It'll be a good
something to
experiment this
consider at
year.
least. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tight ends and running backs are like you can almost like let those go and just hit quarterback and wide receiver early. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But wide
Yeah.
receivers are also becoming like a dime a dozen as
Yeah.
well,
They're
unless you get
so,
one of the elite guys, right?
yeah. And even those tiers, right? I mean, if we go through our top 8 to 10, right, you're looking at your Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, probably Amon Ra is up there somewhere.
Yeah.
So if that's your top four,
Tyreek is up there in points. But
yeah.
Lamb, AJ Brown,
Yep.
Amon
AJ
Ra,
Brown.
Jefferson, Chase,
So
maybe
top
BJ.
five.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And then you probably go to the old guys like Tyreek,
Yeah.
Diggs, players like that. Debo's
Yeah.
moving up there, Puka.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty easy, like just
Yeah.
step down. There's not
back.
like a huge drop from like one, tier to the
Yeah.
next. It's almost like linear in a way.
But if you could walk out of a draft having, Amon Ra and Puka, and then still snag, like you said, an Evan Ingram later on,
as
versus
opposed to like
coming
a
out of
Mark
it.
Andrews and
Yeah.
one of those guys, and
Yeah.
then
And then, even
you have to
Waddle
grab
or
somebody
T
like
or something
Calvin
like that.
Ridley or T Higgins
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all a give and take, I guess. But and I think that there's always, every year there's some players who people will overvalue because they had a really good 1 year, but then they don't take into account like the situation's changing or, maybe like whether there's going to be coaches leaving or they're and it's just a 1 year they were hot, like, or it was really good fantasy football, but not really good actual football, a la Jameis. Like he was a guy everybody wanted until they didn't, like it was just like, 30 interceptions. Okay. Now he's pretty much worthless. But he was amazing when he was starting for you. So now I kind of feel like, is there some quarterbacks like that right now? Like is Howell that? Like he's put up crazy points, but is he a guy that sounds like Rivera's not coming back? At least on something I read today, where they're kind of like, are they going to make a big change, or are they going to say, well, let's just roll with this guy because he's at least serviceable and we pay him nothing because he's a 5th rounder?
Yeah. I think he's probably my biggest question mark of what to do. I don't know.
What about Ritter?
I would rather have Howell over Ritter.
Yeah,
pretty easily.
I agree.
I mean, Ritter I would definitely take as like not whatever the term is that's slightly better than a throw in.
Like Daniel Jones.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel Jones, you at least assume he's got a little bit of job security.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. With how significantly, tied to his contract they are.
So I'm sorry, like it just popped in my head.
No,
like Justin Fields, like, are you like if you're doing a startup in February?
Yep.
Is he somebody you want to take because you feel like there's going to be a discount because there's going to be a lot of unknown with him? Or is he somebody you avoid because of the unknown?
No, I think he's somebody that I would take. The question is where depending on how the team is forming, I would be open to taking him as my QB2. I would love to have him as, my QB3 if I felt good about the rest of the build, but or if I was, if it was, I would love to have him as a QB3 and then be able to move him if he does really well and then round out if I felt weaker at another position. But if I feel like I'm drafting well in the other areas, like we're talking about, if we have a stud QB1 able to get some value at wide receiver and, if he's kind of that he's sitting there as the top of the tier or the top of the next, end of his tier and going to be significantly better than what's left for QB2. I'm with you as far as I don't want to really rotate quarterbacks through the QB2 if I don't have to. I would prefer to be able to, I don't mind variability in my QB2, but I want to feel good about their potential. So, yeah, I would be somebody that would take him in a startup more often than not.
I think I would too. And I think it really depends on my other quarterbacks. Because, like, if I had Dak or something, I'd be happy to have Justin Fields as my second because Dak's a consistent, or like Brock Purdy or somebody like that, somebody that's going to be consistent but not necessarily dynamic. And then you pick Fields like later, who could actually end up being your QB1. If things go right, but at a lower cost. And it's kind of like Jalen Hurts right before he blew up last year. So yeah, I agree. Like if I had or Burrow, like let's say you got Burrow in the first round, and then it kind of, you got to the third, you pick a wide receiver or something, like Amon-Ra in the second round or something, and then the third round gets to you take Fields, and then maybe later on you even take like Howell. You know what I mean? That's your three quarterbacks. You have two guys with upside, plus Burrow being an elite quarterback. You might end up having two elite quarterbacks and another great backup. Or if one of the two work out, you're fine, and if one busts and the other one kind of takes a little bit of a step, you're still in great position. That's kind of an interesting build to me. Have that one guy who's like a stalwart that you don't have to worry about, and then
that's the ideal. That's the idea. But I think that's where it's like, if you're to go through, I think we did this a few weeks ago, right? Like going through our top 8 quarterbacks, like depending on where we are in the draft, let's say we're picking in at 7 or 8 or something like that, kind of middle, where if we're doing a 14 team where we're in the middle of each round, you got to assume the first 7 picks are going to be quarterbacks. And by the time you get to 7 or 8, then you very well might be at a Dak. You might be at a Burrow at a discount, or you could also be at an Anthony Richardson who, maybe does have some of the upside.
Yeah. And I'd be fine rolling the dice on Richardson early, and then you go with a Purdy maybe next, and then you go with like a Kirk Cousins or something like that.
I like that.
Like that's an interesting build too, because you have the 2 steady guys, you have 2 young guys, that's a fun way too. So that's the way, like, things you got to think about when you're doing a startup, just kind of the different types of quarterbacks, because you don't want 3 all upside guys, right? Like, do you really want to take let's say the draft picks are in there. Do you really want to take the guy that's going to end up with Drake May? That pick to pick Drake May plus Fields and Howell. Like, you don't know what you have, right? Like, it's 3 guys that could be 0 in a year, and unlikely it'll be 0, but we don't know what a rookie quarterback's going to be. Maybe he's Rosen,
or Bryce Young.
Or Bryce Young, exactly. And Fields, I think, will be fine, but he could end up being just a guy that, you're not super pumped to start. But it's not looking like that's going to be the case anymore.
No, I think he'll be usable enough, especially for fantasy. And ideally, if he cleans up a couple things, right? I guess he holds onto the ball a little too long.
I don't necessarily know he's ever gonna get better at that, but it'd be nice. But if he can move around in the pocket and be more aware of the pocket, then it might not matter, because he'll give himself more time. So,
or just get into the place. Okay, great. You have your 3 seconds and then run. You know what? Use your talent. Make a positive play.
Have a little bit more awareness and have a little bit more of a feel for the game, as opposed to because I understand he's probably overthinking right now, because everybody's like, we need you to stand in the pocket. So then he's in the pocket, and he's like, okay, I got to wait for this play to develop. And then he's getting hit. And rather than just saying, well, shit, I've been in here for a while. I need to get out of here. And
what are your we keep kind of talking about this here. What are your thoughts on like an auction draft? When's the last time you've done one of those?
It's been a while. They're interesting. Like there's a lot more preparation in my opinion, and I feel like I think it might be hard as a tandem to do it. I think when we're like in a snake draft, you're with a distinct, it's like who do you pick, or do you
Yep.
trade the pick? It's not how much do you bid for Anthony Richardson versus Purdy, or when's Purdy going to get called versus Anthony Richardson, and so there's a lot more variables involved. There's a lot more like budgeting, and I think it might be
keep track of what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Where their bids
it's
are.
really labor intensive. Like when I've done them, I mean, I'm spent at the end of it. Like, I mean, there's like, because I'm so prepared, like my accounting degree kicks in with my all the spreadsheets and points per dollar and all that kind of stuff that you're calculating. God. And oh my God, it's an illness. But
so we'd want to live stream it is what we're saying.
Oh yes. Like
give the people what they want.
Yeah, we'll do like 1 hour of live stream preparation every week or every night for people to watch.
Oh gosh.
It'd be fun if it was like a live, like a quick live auction, like a fast live auction. I don't know if there's any of those out there. Like most of them that I've done are like
there's
10-hour clocks or whatever, and every time there's a bid, it
get reset.
So the clock, it's a real long draft, and it can be fun because people get so mad.
Yeah, it's a test of patience too. You get people that just get fed up and like screw it. I'm just gonna come way over the top and okay.
I mean, in those drafts, like just being patient, man. If you can sit back and just let shit happen for like the first 4 days without like bidding, and just let people get like just go crazy, because you always see like a team and they're like, well, shit, I still need 23 players and I only have $50 left, and it's like they got to sit there for like 2 weeks before they can bid again because they bought 3 players and everybody else is buying all these deals and you don't have any money to spend on them. So patience is a huge thing in those.
I get caught being that person that tries to push higher and higher, and then every once in a while I get stuck with somebody I didn't really want.
I think everybody does that. Like you try to price and force. And then you're like, oh fuck. Like I've learned not to do that. I've learned to like, okay, I'll bump this up because I'm okay paying this.
Right. If I get stuck.
If somebody else gets a little bit of a deal, that's fine. But this is where what I want to pay. And even if I feel like if I want to pay bid 18 and that's what I feel comfortable bidding, but I feel the player's worth 23 and this guy's going to get it for 19. Oh, well, like, good for him, but I didn't want to pay 20, so price enforcing, like, especially when you're like, I think this guy is bid this much, I'm gonna like cost him a couple more dollars, and then you can get too cute and then you end up screwing yourself.
All of a sudden you've got Jonathan Taylor, Saquon, and Kamara. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I already told 2 leagues that I'm done this year.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Okay. How many leagues were you in this year?
20 Dynasty.
Okay.
So cut 10%.
Nice.
And I think I'm gonna email. I'm in a couple of the safe leagues. So I'm gonna email the commissions there and just let them know what's happening with life and see if they're cool with finding a way to let me back out of a couple, maybe this year and a couple next year. Just kind of get a plan for extraction out of those that can really kind of consolidate to some more leagues with people that I know and that I want to be stay in touch
Like
with
in
and stuff.
contact with, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
So, but yeah, feels good. It's a little scary to push send on the first couple of messages to the commissioners and let them know, but
Yeah.
feel
Safe
like
leagues,
it's
I pulled the Band-Aid, man.
I
I was
know.
just like, I was in 4 safe leagues and I just shot the email. I'm like, cut me out, man. I'm done. And
Yeah,
it's easy. They get people leaving all the time, so it's not a big deal.
yeah. So, but yeah, man, it's crazy. We're coming up Christmas in, geez,
Yeah,
what is
2
it, 11
weeks.
days? Something
Yeah.
like not even 2 weeks yet, and we'll be hitting the new year, and then before we know it, people will be putting all their pre-draft content out, and it'll be interesting. So I don't know when we'll get to do this again here. I'll certainly keep you updated as our transition finishes up, and if I had to guess, it'll probably be, maybe we do something after playoffs wrap up for us here. The NFL regular season wraps up, and we kind of figure out where our teams landed and stuff, and then
Sure.
yeah, we'll figure out schedules. Bill and I have talked a little bit offline about what I think we're both up for based on the time difference that we'll have, and really kind of what we want to put out there. I'm certainly not a huge film person, so I'm not watching a bunch of stuff pre-draft. I'll kind of follow along and see what I think. But we'll definitely try to keep some stuff going here. Our membership or our fee for Podbean, I just got the email that renewed
Oh
yesterday, so,
shit. Can you cancel
so
it?
I probably could, but if we want to do this again, we're gonna have to do something. So,
I mean, we could just leave it on
we'll
YouTube.
yeah, we'll talk through it and see what happens there. But the fact is, as an accountant, I think you understand that each time that we post on Podbean, it makes it cheaper. Is that
Yeah,
how it
yeah. The
works?
average cost per post. Yeah.
So we'll figure it out. But all that to
Yeah.
say,
So, like, dude, safe travels. Congratulations on the move with your family. That's so exciting. Yeah, it's been a good year. I've had a lot of fun doing this with you, and yeah, we'll just figure it out. Like, pay attention to the feeds. We'll pop on when we feel like it. Really,
yeah,
it's just that's kind of what we last year. We really didn't do anything in the off season, so I don't mind meeting up now and again to do it. And but maybe it's once a month. Maybe it's whatever you and I can cross paths, based on our lives. So yeah, I'm excited for it, and hopefully we can keep it going for a bit. And we appreciate everybody that has took their time out of their day to listen to us babble about fantasy football. Like, hey, this is fun just to talk about it, So
yeah,
people fucking listen to us is crazy. So
yeah,
appreciate you
yeah.
guys.
It's been awesome. And then yeah, I think if we end up getting into a startup somewhere, we'll probably do an episode or two. We'll
Yeah,
share some
we'll
progress and some thoughts there.
we'll
So
definitely do a startup. Like, let's be
yeah,
honest. So
yeah, we'll find something.
yep.
So more to come. But yeah, we'll post where we can and try to give a little bit of a heads up so it's not too last minute.
Yep.
But yeah, likewise, just grateful for everyone that's kind of been on this path with us for a bit, and has been asking questions, sharing their thoughts, encouraging us, and just letting us be a part of your weekly weekly routine. So for now, for 2023, I think we are out of here.
Late.